first time I saw Sam Soleyn in person, he was emerging from the arrival gates at Schiphol Airport, rolling his suitcase with the ease of a man who had traveled the world and seen it all. Adjusting to the crisp Dutch air after the dry warmth of New Mexico was a shift, but the moment he saw me, his face lit up with a broad smile. We had known each other for years, bound by a shared passion for history, culture, and the deeper questions of life. Conversations across oceans, hours of discussions about faith, the past, and where the world was heading had led to this moment. And now, here we were, two men from different backgrounds, different continents, but brought together by an undeniable sense of purpose. I drove us straight into Amsterdam, parking near the Eiffel Museum. We walked along the waterfront, passing the Grand Scheepvaart Museum, a relic of the Dutch Maritime Empire, before making our way toward Central Station. Sam marveled at the city's blend of the old and the modern, the towering glass structures standing alongside 17th-century gabled houses. The canal cruise was next. We boarded one of the boats, settling into seats that should have offered a spectacular view of the city's architectural splendor. We found ourselves at the back with a barely functional audio guide and a window that somewhat distorted the grandeur of the cityscape. Still, the charm of Amsterdam prevailed. As we glided through the waterways, we spoke of how this city, once a humble fishing village, had risen to become a global epicenter of trade, art, and religious refuge. Our stomachs led us next to a small cafe, where we sat outside despite the unpredictable Dutch weather. Thick, fluffy pancakes arrived, drizzled with syrup, and for a moment, silence settled between us as we simply enjoyed the warmth of the food. Across from us, the old city hummed with life. The past and present converged, cyclists darting past centuries-old buildings, the sounds of tram bells mingling with the distant chatter of tourists. Refueled, we delved deeper into history. From the imposing St. Nicholas Basilica, its medieval towers watching over the city, then to the hidden church of Our Lord in the attic. A secret sanctuary where Catholics once worshipped in defiance of religious persecution. At Dam Square, we entered the Royal Palace, once the Grand Town Hall of Amsterdam. Walking through its opulent halls, we imagined the city's elite merchants, bankers, and politicians who once governed a vast empire from these very rooms. The weight of history pressed in, a reminder of how power shifts and how faith has always found a way to endure, even in challenging times. As the day wound down, we left the city behind and drove to Apkud, where our accommodation awaited, a perfect retreat after a day filled with discovery. That evening, we returned to Amsterdam for a grand concert at the Concertgebouw. The Wiener Philharmonic Orchestra performed, each note resonating through the hall with precision and beauty. Despite the prestige of the venue, our seats were less than ideal, tucked at the back into a corner with a view obstructed by the much higher seats in front of us. We laughed at our misfortune, but as the music swelled, our laughter faded into quiet admiration. There was something profound about the sound that connected, it uplifted, it spoke to the soul. The morning light filtered through the ancient trees of Apkud, casting golden beams across the park outside our apartment window. The air was crisp, the kind of early autumn chill that hinted at warmth later but still carried a fresh bite. We set off for the Van Gogh Museum, the air still tinged with the scent of rain from the night before. Amsterdam's weather could shift moods as quickly as an artist changing brushes, one moment bright, the next subdued. It felt fitting, considering where we were headed. Stepping into the museum, we found ourselves surrounded by the color, chaos, and brilliance of Van Gogh's artistry. His self-portraits stared at us, each one revealing more than just the changes in his technique. They were windows into his evolving perspective on life. Sam stood in front of the starry night over the Rhone for what felt like an eternity, his arms folded, his expression unreadable. "What do you see?" "A man desperately trying to capture something greater than himself," he said. "Like so many of us." The weight of his words lingered as we moved through the gallery, absorbing the brushstrokes of genius mixed with turmoil. It felt like a prelude to something greater, as if we were being prepared for a deeper revelation that had not yet come. Next was the Rijksmuseum, a cathedral of Dutch mastery where history whispered from the gilded frames. We stood before the night watch, its figures frozen in time, Rembrandt's mastery of light and depth unparalleled. Then Vermeer's quiet domestic scenes, moments of stillness and reflection that felt like a different kind of revelation, one of simplicity, of being present in the moment. We decided to grab lunch at the museum cafe, expecting something light before continuing our day. What we didn't expect was the betrayal Sam's stomach would endure. Despite the setback, we pressed on, heading toward the Portuguese synagogue. The scent of old books, the weight of history, transported us back centuries. Here, the Sephardic Jewish community had found refuge when the rest of Europe had turned them away. We sat in silence for a while, absorbing the resilience of a people who had known exile yet never lost their spirit. The parks around us hummed with life, children playing, cyclists weaving through cobbled paths. Amsterdam was a city where past and present lived side by side, entwined like ivy on ancient brick. Early dinner was at the Plantage restaurant, nestled beside one of Europe's oldest zoos. We talked about curiosity, about how the Enlightenment had shaped the world, and how knowledge and faith could enrich one another. Back at our hotel, I ran to the nearby store to grab a few essentials, yogurts, fruit, something mild for Sam's uneasy stomach. The morning greeted us with crisp air and the scent of very damp earth. One of those unpredictable Dutch days where the weather seemed to change its mind every few minutes. Sam had caught a cold, no doubt a result of the shifting climate, the sudden gusts of wind between the canals, and the brief showers that left us dashing for cover the day before. Today, we were stepping into history. Our first destination was Muterslot. A medieval fortress rising from the water like something out of a chivalric tale. Built in 1285, its walls had witnessed sieges, betrayals, and the grandeur of the Dutch Golden Age. I saw Sam's eyes widen as we walked through the imposing gatehouse. The wind picked up again as we left Muterslot behind, and Sam wrapped his scarf a little tighter. Our next stop was Utrecht, a province whose very foundations were shaped by faith. Once a Roman stronghold, later the epicenter of Catholicism in the Low Countries, and eventually a stronghold of Protestantism. It had seen the tides of belief shift like the canals running beneath its streets. The Dom Tower loomed in the distance, the tallest church tower in the Netherlands. By midday, we made our way to De Haar Castle, the largest and most extravagant castle in the Netherlands. Lunch was in the castle's former stables, now a charming restaurant. Sam's stomach seemed more at ease today, though the erratic shifts between sunshine, wind, and drizzle weren't helping his energy levels. The Rothschilds had left their mark here, funding its restoration and transforming it into a monument of aristocratic grandeur. Sam, despite his cold, couldn't help but marvel at the architectural brilliance of Pierre Cuypers, the same mastermind behind Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum and Central Station. By the time we finished, we were already running late. Dinner was at Belinda's house in Weesp. A Dutch dinner invitation was not something to be taken lightly. Punctuality was a sign of respect. The thought of showing up late gnawed me, but Sam, ever the gentleman, insisted we stop to buy flowers for our hostess. A small gesture, he said, handing them to her upon arrival. She beamed, instantly forgiving our tardiness. The evening turned out to be a true delight. We had planned to attend a concert at the Concertgebouw. Janine Jansen was performing, but as we sat around Belinda's table, engaged in what I can only describe as an unforgettable conversation, I knew we had made the right choice. This night wasn't about music, it was about connection. I took a moment, looking out over the quiet park, the ancient trees swaying gently under the soft glow of streetlights. Tomorrow, we would head south. The sound of clanking metal, hurried footsteps, and muffled voices dragged me out of sleep. Market day. I jumped out of bed and rushed to the window, my stomach lurching at the sight below. My car, my only means of transport for this journey, was surrounded by market stalls. Vendors were setting up their stands, oblivious to the fact that they were boxing in my vehicle with crates of fresh produce and second-hand books. I grabbed my keys and bolted down the stairs, barely slipping into my shoes. The vendors shot me amused glances as I zigzagged between their carts, apologizing in Dutch while maneuvering the car out of its premature tomb. Disaster averted. We packed our things and set off towards our next accommodation, a beautiful farmhouse in the green heart of Holland, near Oudwater.
Rijd naar het zuiden op de Hoogstraat richting de Laan van Binnenrust.
The drive south was smooth, the clouds painting the sky in dramatic strokes of white against blue, as though a master artist had taken a brush to the heavens. Sam, still shaking off the remnants of his cold, gazed out of the window, taking in the endless Dutch landscapes, the windmills, the neat rows of fields. The distant church spires punctuating the horizon. This country, he mused, looks exactly like an old master's painting. The Hague welcomed us with its dignified charm. Unlike Amsterdam's bustling canals and centuries-old merchant houses, The Hague carried the weight of governance, of law, of diplomacy. It wasn't just a city, it was a stage where the world's leaders debated justice and power. We started at the Moritz house, its stately facade belying the treasures within. Inside, we stood before Vermeer's girl with a pearl earring, her enigmatic gaze meeting ours across the centuries. Rembrandt's The Anatomy lesson of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp captured our imagination, the play of light and shadow, the intensity of learning and mortality. From there, we walked to the Binnenhof, the seat of Dutch power. It was a place of contradictions, ancient yet modern, democratic yet steeped in old hierarchies. But, of course, as I pointed out to Sam, the entire complex was under heavy construction. We had dinner in front of the Ministry of Defense, laughing that it was perhaps the safest place to enjoy a meal. Sam, still battling his cold, needed something for his throat, so we found a pharmacy that had been in operation since the medieval era. The wooden counters, the old apothecary jars, it was like stepping back in time. The Hague, with all its grandeur, was a reminder that power without wisdom was dangerous, and justice without moral guidance was hollow. We arrived at our farmhouse in the early evening. It was perfect, peaceful, secluded, surrounded by nature. I went out for groceries while Sam rested, and when I returned, I decided to make a classic Dutch dish, an ivy stamppot, mashed potatoes with endive and bits of crispy bacon. Sam took one bite and groaned in appreciation. "Man, this is good," he said. "I think you just converted me to Dutch cuisine." We simply felt grateful, for the journey, for the company, and for the beauty found in unexpected places. The morning air carried the crispness of early autumn as we set off for Huckelum. This day would be unlike any other, for today, I would walk the very ground that had once belonged to my ancestors, the Lords of Arkell. The thought stirred something deep inside me, a mixture of excitement and curiosity. As we approached Castle Huckelum, its sturdy walls stood as a testament to centuries of history. Its owner, Jan Willem Rudden, welcomed us warmly. He knew who I was, or rather, who my ancestors had been, and he seemed genuinely pleased to receive us. As we stepped inside, I was immediately struck by the sheer weight of history contained within those walls. Antiques, paintings, suits of armor, and aged manuscripts filled the rooms, whispering stories of a time long gone. Jan Willem spoke in perfect English, making it easy for Sam to follow along. I asked about my ancestors, about the legends surrounding them, and Jan Willem answered with passion and knowledge. We talked of the Arkells' rise and fall, their battles, and their alliances. Sam, ever the keen observer, pointed out that the true inheritance of noble blood is not wealth or power but responsibility and wisdom. As the afternoon passed, we bid Jan Willem farewell and set off toward Arkell itself, then to Gorkum. The drive took us across the dikes of the Ling River. In Gorkum, we walked the old streets where the Van Arkell Palace once stood. I showed Sam the great church, and we found a heated terrace where we sat for a leisurely lunch. After lunch, we headed to the Kinderdijk, hoping to catch the boat tour among the famous windmills. We arrived just minutes too late, the tour had already departed. Though disappointed, we still wandered the grounds, taking in the majestic sight of the towering windmills standing against the sky. They had stood for centuries, defying both time and tide, a symbol of Dutch resilience. On our way back, I suggested a detour to Gouda. It was not far, and I wanted Sam to see the magnificent St. Jan Church with its renowned stained glass windows. As we strolled through the town square, however, something else caught Sam's eye, an art gallery. A bronze sculpture of 7 sheep stood in the window, and Sam was drawn to it immediately. There was something symbolic about it, something deeply personal. He decided to buy it as a gift for his wife Lucy. But, as often happens with American credit cards in Europe, his transaction was declined. Without hesitation, I stepped in and covered the purchase. It would be his token of this journey, a special keepsake. Later, Sam would tell me how much his wife loved it. And I had to agree, it was a masterpiece. That evening, we had an unforgettable experience at the Vis Theater in Almere, watching their renowned performance, Silo 8. The story transported us into the future, to the year 2060, inside a care home where the memories of the elderly were being erased for their own peace. Until the residents rebelled against this loss of identity. The show was a breathtaking mix of societal critique, humor, and technological wonder. Vis, known for its spectacular, immersive performances, had outdone itself once again. Sam was utterly captivated, comparing the surreal spectacle to the works of Federico Fellini. The sheer creativity and technical brilliance left us both in awe. Another long and remarkable day had come to an end. We reflected on the experiences we had shared and looked forward to what lay ahead. Tomorrow, we would go east, toward Germany. Morning broke over the green heart of Holland, casting a golden glow over the fields and canals that had been our home for the past few days. Today, we would leave this tranquil corner of the Netherlands and move eastward. The road ahead promised new encounters, but before we departed, there was one last exchange to be had. Our host, ever the gracious Dutchman, stood by the doorway, hands folded in a knowing gesture of farewell. "I trust you slept well," he asked. "Very well," I responded, though I couldn't help but add, "except for that staircase, it's a hazard waiting to happen." He laughed, nodding in agreement. "You're not the first to say it. And you're right. I should do something about it." With that, we shook hands, and I thanked him for everything. Sam, standing beside me, observed the exchange with his characteristic curiosity, ever intrigued by the way Dutch directness mingled with hospitality. As we drove away, Sam turned to me and said, "You Dutch don't mince words, do you?" I chuckled. "Not if we can help it." The highway carried us through the vast Zuiderzee polders, where the land, so meticulously reclaimed from the sea, stretched in carefully planned lines and geometric perfection. Sam was quiet for a while, gazing out at the horizon. "It's amazing," he finally said. "One of the most densely populated countries in the world, yet so much open space." "That's the Dutch way," I explained. "Every square millimeter is planned. Every milliliter of water is controlled. We're extreme control freaks, but we have to be." I had shown him 2 short documentaries over breakfast, depicting the great floods of the past and the engineering marvels that followed, the Delta Works, the Closure Dike. He had watched in silence, taking it all in, and now I could see that the images had settled in his mind, adding depth to his understanding of this remarkable little country.
1953 is de grootste natuurramp uit de moderne Nederlandse geschiedenis. 1835 mensen kwamen om.
Our first stop was Elburg, a medieval town wrapped in history and charm. The cobbled streets led us past old churches, a synagogue, and the remnants of a monastic presence that once defined the town. The atmosphere was filled with stories waiting to be uncovered. Sam absorbed everything, asking thoughtful questions about Dutch Protestantism, the Jewish presence in the Netherlands, and the shifting tides of religious influence over the ages. Our conversation felt meaningful, as if we were not merely discussing history but uncovering connections between past and present. From Elburg, we pressed on to Palace Het Loo. The grandeur of the former royal palace stood in stark contrast to the humble faith we had just explored. The meticulously designed gardens and opulent interiors spoke of power, influence, and the carefully curated image of monarchy. "Tell me about the oranges," Sam said as we wandered through the corridors. I recounted the tale of how the House of Orange had risen from stadholders to kings, shaping Dutch history through warfare, diplomacy, and resilience. He listened intently, nodding occasionally. So even here, in the land of the common man, nobility still left its mark. In more ways than one, I admitted. The conversation lingered in my mind as we drove to Hartog, where we would meet Alton Wood, Sam's South African friend. There, in a warm and lively home, we shared a meal with a Dutch South African family. The fusion of cultures, histories, and accents reminded us of how interconnected the world had always been. As we ate, we laughed, shared stories, and embraced the joy of meeting kindred spirits.
Er is bijvoorbeeld ook een appgroep waarin bijna alle juweliers van Nederland zitten en daarin wordt volop ervaring en waarschuwing met elkaar gedeeld. Menigeen heeft de beveiliging inderdaad nog verder opgeschroefd, maar daar wil meneer Theo ons niets over vertellen. Wat een dieve gek luistert mee. Maar voor hem heeft hij echter nog wel een boodschap.
The seventh day of our journey began with peaceful anticipation. It was a Sunday, a day of rest and reflection, and I had asked Sam if we could start it with a shared meal of bread and wine. We spoke of the journey so far, of the places we had seen and the conversations that had unfolded. Sam had found a deep appreciation for my home here in Germany. He had rested well, free of the tiredness from traveling, and it was clear that the break had restored him. After a quiet morning, we packed up and set out for Münster. The road stretched ahead, leading to a city known for the echoes of its past. The calm of Sunday lay over the town as we arrived, with the sound of church bells ringing in the air. It was a place rich in history, where faith had once clashed with power in dramatic ways. We walked through the Principalmarkt, the historic marketplace where Jan van Leyden and his followers had declared their own vision of a kingdom of God. Sam listened intently as I spoke of Münster's turbulent past. The city had seen faith transform into fanaticism, hope turn into tyranny. When we reached St. Lambert's Church, we stood beneath the 3 iron cages that still hung from the tower. Inside them, the bodies of the Anabaptist leaders had once been displayed, a reminder of what happens when zeal veers into extremism. I glanced at Sam, and for a moment, I saw something shift in his expression, surprise, yes, but also understanding. A realization seemed to settle over him, a connection made. We stood in silence for a while, each lost in thought. Time moved on, and we decided to skip our planned visit to Xanten. Instead, we drove straight to Dusseldorf, arriving just in time for the opera, Nabucco. This opera, I said, was Verdi's true breakthrough, the one that made him great. The story unfolded before us: Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, the conquest of the Jews, their exile. And then, the moment of the evening, the chorus of the Hebrew slaves. The lament of a displaced people, longing for their homeland. The voices swelled, filling the opera house with sorrow and yearning. I looked at Sam. We did not speak, but in that moment, we understood. The exile of the Israelites. The longing for a kingdom not made by human hands. The lessons of Munster. The path we both carried. It was all woven together in the melodies of Verdi's masterpiece. Tomorrow, we would walk in the footsteps of Charlemagne, exploring the legacy of an empire that shaped the world. The morning arrived with the promise of discovery. After a quiet breakfast, we set off for Aachen, the city of Charlemagne. It was a short drive, yet it felt like a journey through time. As we entered the medieval heart of the city, the weight of history seemed to envelop us. Half-timbered houses leaned into the cobbled streets, while towering stone structures bore the marks of centuries. We walked slowly, taking in the palaces, the old churches, the relics of a bygone era. The past was alive here, whispering through the walls and echoing beneath our feet. The highlight of our visit was the Palatine Chapel, the very heart of Aachen Cathedral, where Charlemagne had been crowned emperor in the year 800. Standing beneath its soaring arches, I watched Sam absorb it all. He had studied history, law, and theology, seen images of this place before, but nothing could compare to standing here in person. We stood in silence, gazing upward at the golden mosaics. Then, I saw it, the vision of the throne of God, surrounded by the 4 beasts and 24 elders, depicted in the ceiling. It was a moment of alignment. Sam had spoken of this vision many times, and now, here it was, in a cathedral built over 1,000 years ago. He sat down, quietly overwhelmed, as if the weight of it all was settling in. I moved toward the golden reliquary holding Charlemagne's remains, but I was stopped. Only guided tours could enter. At that very moment, another group arrived, and among them was a woman in a wheelchair. I stepped forward, offering to help carry her into the sacred space. In return for this small act, I was granted access, and I insisted that Sam be allowed in as well. Together, we entered, stepping into the very heart of the chapel. The brilliance of gold and stained glass surrounded us. We stood, marveling at the craftsmanship, the artistry, and the devotion poured into this place. As we left the cathedral, we visited the Charlemagne Center, diving deeper into his reign. Sam was captivated by the artifacts, the treasures of an era often labeled the Dark Ages, yet here, the beauty, knowledge, and artistry told a different story. I see now, he mused, why people believed these churches were the dwelling place of God. How could they not? The road led us onward to Cologne, another city shaped by faith and history. And there, towering above us, stood the Cologne Cathedral, one of the greatest marvels of Gothic architecture. We stood beneath its massive spires, feeling the pull of centuries. Inside, we traced the stories of the pilgrims who had come before us, drawn to the relics of the three magi housed within. Again, we stood in silent awe. This was a place of faith, devotion, and craftsmanship beyond comprehension. The air carried the scent of old stone and candle wax, a tangible presence of time itself. As we wandered through the vast cathedral, we marveled at the ambition of those who had built it. Their faith had driven them to create something that would stand for generations, a monument to the divine. The day was winding down. As we left Cologne, I stopped for groceries, preparing for one final meal together. Back at our villa in Kerkrade, I cooked while Sam sat, reflecting on all we had experienced. He was eager to return home to his wife and family, but I could see in his eyes that this journey had left an impression on him. He placed his eye-catching gift on the table. "For Lucy," he said with a big smile. The 7 bronze sheep crafted in Gouda, a true Dutch masterpiece. A symbol of the journey, of the lessons learned, and of the past that continues to speak to those who listen. The weight of history had shaped us, as it had shaped those before us. And perhaps, just perhaps, we had glimpsed something beyond ourselves.